The wellness industry is full of smart, ambitious, talented women barely scraping by financially. Today, we'll discuss the societal forces at play that keep your prices low and why you're rocked with guilt when you think about raising them. Huge problem, Jenny, huge problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think neither of us expected that we would be diving into an issue like this when we
Yeah.
started our
Yeah.
businesses in this market, but this is something that comes up, I would say, like, at least weekly with our
Mhm.
clientele, and so it's worth having a bigger discussion about it here. We talk about it a lot on our coaching calls.
Yeah. It's every cohort we run, it's people are terrified to raise their prices or take a look at their prices for fear of backlash from customers, from society. So let's first talk about commodity. Like
Yeah.
this is something we teach a lot. So let's introduce that to the audience now.
Yeah, so in economics, there's this idea of commodified markets and commodities, and things like coffee and timber and oil are considered commodities, like they're interchangeable. So we all know there's exceptions to this, but basically those are things that are interchangeable. So the price rises and falls now globally for those elements. And we just are here to say that your wellness based work, your creator work, is not a commodity. So even if you see someone charging $10 a month for something similar to what you do, that does not mean that that's like the market rate for that item, right? Like
Right.
you are providing something unique in the world, and we want you to think about the value that you're giving to your students and your clients. And just because something is available for free on YouTube or for a very low price somewhere else on the internet or in person does not mean that that's like the market rate.
Right. Which a lot of women, which is mostly our clients, like that is so hard. Like they just look at the world and see what's the price of coffee, what's the price of yoga, what's the price of a Pilates class, and they make their decisions on that, and that is a huge problem. So I love the idea to think that your work is your work. Like it's not interchangeable with another yoga class or another yoga teacher, right? You
Mhm.
are special and unique, and people are going to pay for your expertise because of who you are and your past experience and the way that your IP, your process, all the things, right? But you are
Yeah.
not interchangeable with other yoga teachers or wellness creators of
Or
whatever kind.
coaches
Yeah.
or nutritionists. Yeah, and I wanna say that part of your job as a creator is to differentiate yourself and what you
Yes.
sell from other
Yes.
people, right? So that's your job. So if you're not doing your job differentiating yourself to the market, then people are likely to see you as a commodity, right? Because they're
I
like,
can get this on YouTube. What's
"Yeah,
so
what's the difference between
special
you
about
and
this?
YouTube?" Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, that's right.
So
That's a whole other video, but yeah, I that is an important point that the job of you as an entrepreneur, as the CEO of your company, is to figure out the messaging and your positioning so that you are distinguished, that you are different, that
Mhm.
you are niche down, and it's very clear who would wanna work with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would just like we're just touching on this point today. We should probably do a whole video on this, Sandy, at some point, but we really want you to kind of join us in this intentional process of decommodifying the wellness industry. It doesn't
Yeah.
serve anyone for people to think about the work that you do as a commodity. So it really kind of like affects everyone in a negative way, which we'll touch on in a minute. But
Mhm.
like let's like think about this idea of decommodifying, because it does no good for you or the people that you serve for them to
Yeah.
think that this is just some interchangeable exercise class, for example.
Right, right, which it starts up here. You've got really gotta start, like, really thinking about your work in a different way. So,
Yeah.
okay. Second point are the business model. So,
Yep.
what I find so curious about wellness is like I've started businesses in the past, and every single one, I will look at what are my costs, how much do I want to make, and sort of select pricing or choose pricing, or even like a certain business model that will be able to pay for all the expenses plus pay me a salary and hopefully over the next couple of years make a profit. It's so confusing to me when people price so low and they're not making a profit or they're not able to take a salary. I don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
but I think the pressure is external. It is society, it is the wellness industry, it is what everyone else is doing. You don't want to be the person to make more money than your colleague, or not make more money, but like have higher prices than somebody else, right? It's like we need to look at the business model. Does it even make sense? And I also think that people look at other business models or other businesses and say, oh, that's a $25 a month membership, for example. And you assume that that person is actually profitable and happy with that pricing. And I would guess that they're not.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think wellness is not the only industry where this happens, but
Yeah.
it certainly is prevalent. And I
Yeah.
would say everyone who is watching this video and thinking about this idea or listening to this as a podcast should start to think about, like, what is my goal here? If your goal is just to provide service and you are independently wealthy or you have another means of financial support, then go do that. Do that as, volunteer work, ask for donations. There's nothing wrong with providing what you do as a service, doing it in, hospitals or churches. That's a beautiful thing to do with your free time. But many people who are watching this are wanting to be business owners, right? You're
Yeah.
wanting to actually like support yourself through your work. And if that's the case, you need to think about your work as a business. You need to think about your revenue goal. How much do you need to make to support yourself? And then backtrack, how much will it cost for me to perform this work, to have a business, to pay for bookkeeping, all the things. And then you actually have to work backwards to figure out your profit margin and how much you need to charge based on how much you need to make. So
Yeah.
this is just like business 101. Part of
Mm-hmm.
this is taking yourself seriously as a business owner, being willing to think about yourself as an entrepreneur and a business owner, which I know is also a mindset issue for a lot of folks in this industry. And then that should be like your starting point. It shouldn't be, well, I'm going to look around. Most people are charging $10 for this. I guess that's what I'll do. And I'll just, at some
Yeah.
point, hopefully I'll have a big enough following and I'll make enough money that I won't be losing money every month. Like, please
Yeah.
don't ever operate like that.
That's years of frustration. That's
Yeah.
years of just like so much anger, so like just exasperation. That's what you're
Yeah.
heading into. Nobody runs a business like that. And for some reason, it's that way in wellness. So
Yeah.
that's why these
Well,
conversations are so important.
yeah, I mean, startups run like that because they're venture backed, and so someone else is footing the bill. But that's a separate conversation. In wellness, Sandy, I will say I want people to realize that it's okay to invest your in yourself. You can say, okay, for the first 8 months, I'm okay not taking a profit or paying myself because I have this plan and I'm executing this plan, and it requires it for the first 6 months or the first 12 months. I'm not paying myself because I'm reinvesting in the business and I'm buying
Mhm.
marketing tools and whatever else, right? Like, that's okay. It should be part of a plan though. It shouldn't just be this indefinite process of I'm just going to like keep doing this and not making any money.
Mhm. Right.
So that's all.
Okay. Let's talk about the industry of wellness specifically and how it supports, or the pressure to not charge very much.
Yeah. So, first of all, people pay a lot of money for yoga pants at stores like Lululemon. So,
Mhm.
they're paying over $100 for like recycled plastic water bottle pants. So, the people who buy wellness classes and wellness services have disposable income for the most part to buy physical pieces of clothing and gear, right? So, this is an industry that is catering to people with disposable income. So,
Mhm.
for like, yet somehow the common sort of talk and thinking among practitioners in our industry is that this is a service, like everyone should have access to this, and therefore I can't charge very much money, if any, because everyone needs to have what I do because it's so important. And I hope you can see the disconnect here. Like, it shouldn't be the brands making yoga pants that are making all the money versus the people who are actually doing the work and transforming
Mhm.
someone's life. No one's life has ever been transformed by a fanny pack or a water bottle or a pair of yoga pants. But your work that you do, your healing work, your spiritual work, your physical activities, your exercise, like you get people moving and using their bodies and getting to know their bodies, that does change people's lives, right?
Mhm.
And so I just want, like, that's like a societal weird industry phenomenon where somehow we're okay with charging a lot of money for gear, but not for the actual activities that one would perform while wearing the gear.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's so true. We had a coaching call recently where somebody has a fairly large audience, and she's planning this spectacular launch around teaching other yoga teachers, and it's going to be amazing. And she had a comment. It was on her Instagram, I think, and it's like,
I think
"Why
so,
aren't you
like a
doing
D
this for free?"
I think
A
DM.
DM. "Why aren't you doing this for free?"
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, that's the thinking of our culture, is that wellness should be free or very low cost.
Yeah, unless it's sanctioned by a pharmaceutical company or clothing manufacturer, right? So, like,
Yeah,
what are those triggers going on in our heads? Like, how have we been conditioned to think that if it's coming from, like, a major institution or, like, money-making body,
right.
somehow it can be expensive, but if it's coming from a person, it needs to be free or cheap. Like,
Mhm.
that's really effed up. Like, I just like, we all need to question that all the time, and it's not your fault if you've been conditioned this way, right? Like, we talk about
Mhm.
this a lot,
Yep.
Sandy, with, like, kind of feminism and, like, internalized oppression. Like, if you've been conditioned to think that what you do should be cheap, that's not your fault, but now that you know that that's
Yeah.
your conditioning, like, you've gotta do the work to sort of undo that.
Right, and, it just this conversation reminded me of one of our, coaching clients. This is from a long time ago, but she has a brick and mortar studio as well as teaches online, and she had some, like, actual major increases in costs, like rent, or I can't remember what, but, like, there was actual monthly fees for her expenses were going up, and she wrote a letter to all her membership clients, and it's a fairly big membership, and she said, "I have to raise prices, and this is why." And nobody had a problem with it, right?
Mhm.
So there's also,
Yeah.
like, where are we holding ourselves back, and do we need these, like, massive expense increases to be able to go and justify a price increase? Like, but it was just so
Mhm.
interesting. She was so afraid of what people were gonna say or with the judgment from her clients, and everyone was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, totally get it. I know things are expensive out there. You do
Yeah.
great work. Raise my membership, fine." Right? So
Yeah, I think that's such a good example, Sandy, because it's also showing that the pushback is often not coming from, like, the
right.
student or the
Yeah.
client,
Yeah.
it's coming from peers in the
Yes.
industry,
Yes, or
and I think
strangers,
or
strangers.
strangers. Oh, yeah, strange dudes on Instagram or whatever. We get that's all of the pushback in the world. Strange dudes on social. But, that's where we need to do the work
Yeah, yeah,
collectively as an industry to start to change those expectations, because chances are the people whose lives you're affecting and transforming are not gonna be offended if you need to charge a little or you want to charge a little more money. It's
right.
like your friend or your teacher's friend who follows
Mhm,
you on Instagram. Like, that's where you're gonna get the pushback. So you also have to just kind of develop a sense of, like, self-confidence
mhm,
and belief in your pricing so that
mhm.
when those inevitable criticisms come your way, you're like, "Mm, I'm sorry you
Yeah,
feel that way," or "That's
yeah.
fine, you're
Yeah,
entitled
you're,
to your
like,
opinion."
solid in your decision,
Yeah.
you know why, you're firm, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're not swayed easily by someone disagreeing with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kinda is the segue into the last point here, is, like, modeling, like, what we're asking all of you to do is take a look at your pricing. Are you making the money that you want? Are you holding back because you're afraid someone's gonna say something or judge you? And Jenny, like, talk about modeling the behavior for others.
Yeah, so one of the things that you do as a professional and as an expert in your industry, which is what pretty much all of you are, is you are either setting a good example or a bad example with, kind of how you run your business and how you live your life. And so if you are undercharging, you are making it really hard for the people, kind of the newer teachers, the newer coaches coming in up after you, to be able to charge an appropriate amount, because you are sort of setting an industry standard. You're contributing to something that isn't helpful. So
Mhm,
I also think that if you come in and you're like, hey, this is what I need to charge in order to run a business and support my life, pay my bills, and you're charging an appropriate amount for your products and services, you're making it that much easier for the next person to do the same. And so again, it's like a collective
mhm,
process. And so
mhm.
just like, you're never operating, we don't want you like looking around and playing the comparison trap, but you are operating in a collective industry. And so it's important to be aware
Yeah.
of how your actions in your business affect other
And
people.
it also goes for the example that you said earlier, where if someone is like independently wealthy and doesn't need the money, they should still be charging for
Yeah.
this reason, right? Because if
Yes.
you are just like, I don't need it, I'll just do it for free, it affects all the other wellness creators who are trying to eke out a living, but you're offering something for free and it's hurting everyone else who are asking for money. So,
Yeah, and I would say yes, in like very narrow circumstances, if you run a nonprofit, we have a number of nonprofit clients on our platform who do donation-based work. Like that's a different model, right? Like a
mhm.
nonprofit is a totally different
Yep,
model and
yep,
doing
yep.
charitable work is a different model. It's a model, it's a fair model, but it and oftentimes those folks make more money because they're
Mhm,
accepting donations because their
mhm,
students actually pay more than they would have charged for the same product and service. So just to throw that out there, but it's a different model. But if you are operating as a business, you are, sort of operating in that ecosystem of like the wellness business world. You really need to be aware of how your pricing impacts other people.
mhm, mhm.
And I think that that's just something, look around and see how much people copycat that stuff. So
Yeah,
even if you're making your own pricing decisions from a place of like working backwards in a business plan, other people are going to look at what you do and just kind of copy it. That's just
right.
kind of how it's going to happen.
Right. Amazing. Okay. Thank you, Jenny. It was a great conversation. So, if you are convinced that you need to change your prices and you're ready to make more money, check out this next video where we give you 10 different ideas on how to make more money.